Hi, thanks for joining me. Today I'd like to talk with you about video game fan translations, specifically the top 10 translations I'd like to play but haven't. The catch-22 of fan translations is that in order to play a game you need to want to play it, and in order to want to play a game you need to know about it. However, there are hundreds upon hundreds of games that were only released in Japan or some other region and never localized in English. Outside of projects that were announced in game magazines and then cancelled for a Western release, there was little to no way to know which games didn't make it to Western shores until the internet. Even now there are countless titles of which there is little English language information available, and sometimes there's almost no information, even in Japanese. Personally, I'd like to see as many folks as possible take a serious look at fan translations as a window into gaming history and a way to appreciate games that were heretofore unavailable to them as a monolanguage English speaker. However, I, despite participating in the fan translation of games, have rarely played them myself. The late Michael Jackson has a song whose lyrics go, "I'm starting with the man in the mirror." To that end, here are 10 fan-translated games that I would like to take a serious look at but haven't, and you may be interested in them as well. To start with, we have Fushigi no Umi no Nadia, aka Nadia, the Secret of Blue Water. Despite the fact that I frequently plumb the depths of unknown Japanese games in search of things that look fun to translate, much of my passion for unlocalized Japanese games comes from my love of anime. I was introduced to The Secret of Blue Water on fan-subtitled VHS tapes long before there was an official North American home video release. The game, released on the Mega Drive or Genesis as it's known in North America, is an adventure game in the style of a Japanese RPG. You walk your character around on an RPG-like world and interact with characters and items via menus. The game appears to at least loosely follow the events of the anime. As I haven't played it, I can't vouch for the quality, but I know and have worked with both King Mike and Eie Nihen, who worked on the fan translation, and I trust them to have done a great job. As a fan of the anime, I really owe it to myself to check this fan translation out, if for nothing more than to sate my curiosity and revel in some nostalgia for a show I'm quite fond of. Next we have Cheerio Sen Sen War of the Dead. This is a game that I myself have translated, but never quite found someone to make a patch for it. Regardless, nebulous translations, apparently consisting of Celsion, the Majin Zenki, and CCCMAR, two of whom I've been doing some work with recently, released a complete English language translation patch for this in 2017. It's an action RPG for the PC Engine, also known as the TurboGrafx 16 in North America, that somewhat resembles Zelda 2. Exploration sequences take place in a top-down view, while battles switch to a side-scrolling action view. The atmosphere of this game has always intrigued me. It's horror-themed with grotesque enemies assaulting a besieged town where folks are struggling to survive. Normally I don't like to play games I've translated, but this just seems too fun and old-school to pass up. It helps that it's had a couple of reviews on romhacking.net saying it's pretty fun. Next we have Porto Pia Renzoku Satsujin Jiken, aka the Porto Pia Serial Murder Case. This is a game I'm interested in more for the history than the gameplay. It was written by Yuji Horii of Dragon Quest fame, originally for Japanese PCs, and when ported to the Famicom it was the first such adventure game on the system. It's an influential game, inspiring games directly and game creators more generally. I enjoy some visual novels and Japanese-style adventure games, and while I don't normally play murder mystery games, the fan translation patch is something I've wanted to try since its latest revision in 2015. Next is Valkyrie no Bouken, Toki no Kagi Densetsu, aka Valkyrie's Adventure, Legend of the Time Key. I want to play this game solely thanks to the PC Engine port of the arcade game made by Namco. I really enjoyed the style of that game, and Valkyrie and Sandora are fun characters, so when I found out there was an original Famicom RPG featuring them, I knew I'd like to check it out. I have no idea if the game is any good, but that's part of the fun of trying these old games. Incidentally, the arcade game is available on Namco Museum Volume 5, and this Famicom RPG was remade for Namco Anthology 2, a Japanese PlayStation exclusive. Next up we have Lunar Sanko Suru Gakuen, aka Lunar Walking School. You may remember I was a big fan of Lunar back in the day on the Sega CD. It was my first RPG where the characters and party makeup are dictated by the narrative. It was also impressive for having animated cutscenes and CD quality sound, including vocal tracks. When I found out there was a side story for the Game Gear, I knew I wanted to play it. Luckily for me, Aeon Genesis released a fan translation of this back in 2009, and I've been meaning to check the game out ever since. There is also a Saturn enhanced version of sorts, though I don't know if there is a fan translation of that game yet. I do own it in the original Japanese. Considering the Game Gear version is fully playable in English, I have no excuse for not having tried this one out. Next we have Rent-A-Hero. I mentioned this game in one of my Japanese Dreamcast pickups videos when I got the Dreamcast remake, but come to find out the Mega Drive original was fan translated in English by Red Comet, Paul Jensen, and Nick DC in 2015. It has a wonderfully tongue-in-cheek premise where the typical everyman main character becomes a superhero via a superpowered suit which they must use to make money to pay for its rental fee. From what I can tell, it plays something like an action RPG or an action-adventure game, and I really owe it to myself and the folks who went to the trouble of fan translating this to give it a try. Next up we have Bastard, Ankoku no Hakaishin, aka Bastard, Dark God of Destruction. I feel like I've been talking about Bastard a lot lately, but it was a fairly major franchise in the 90s. There were 2 games based on it, a PlayStation game and a Super Famicom game, which has been fan-translated by DJAP Translations way back in 2000, and given an addendum in 2017 by Docro to make the spell input easier so as to improve the gameplay. It looks to be a 3D arena fighter utilizing Mode 7. I have to say I'm more interested in the PlayStation RPG, but as at least a casual fan of the manga and anime, I really should give this English language fan translation a whirl. Next up we have Der Langrisser. Apparently the second in the Langrisser series, and something of a rework of the original Langrisser 2, I've wanted to dig into this game ever since I tried out the PCFX version back in the day, but struggled due to the language barrier. The game is a tactical RPG with multiple story paths, and is highly reviewed by players on GameFAQs. Since the Super Famicom port has had an English language fan translation since 2012, thanks to Bu and D, I have no excuse not to finally give it the chance I think it deserves. Next is Maho Kishi Rayearth, aka Magic Knight Rayearth. This game joins its cousin on the Sega Saturn in my pile of shame. The fan translation for this was completed way back in 1999, which is quite early in the fan translation scene, incidentally a few years before I got involved. I read that this follows the anime, and includes a more traditional turn-based battle system than the Saturn's action RPG gameplay. Interestingly, the game has an unusually high number of reader reviews on GameFAQs, possibly due to the age of the fan translation. It seems to be polarizing, with some folks really enjoying it and others very disappointed. I'm curious to find out where I fall on this spectrum, and I'd like to see how the early fan translation holds up a full 20 years later. Finally, we have Tenshi Leo Game Hen, aka Tenshi Leo the Game. The fan translation for this tactical RPG based on the anime of the same name was completed in 2009 by Borderline, having based their work on Lina-chan, Nuku Nuku, and Philia's patch from 9 years previous. Needless to say, it's been 10 years and I still haven't taken the time to check out a cool-looking RPG based on one of my favorite anime series, in English nonetheless. This game also has a surprising number of reader reviews on GameFAQs and appears to be generally well received. So those were 10 fan-translated games that I've managed to learn of over the years, but have not played as of yet. I'd be curious to hear if there are any fan translations you've always wanted to try but haven't. Did any of these seem interesting to you? While every game never to receive a Western release will not be a hidden gem, there is a criminal amount of games for every system released in Japan that are or have been unavailable to English speakers without the selfless work of fan translators bringing them to a wider audience. I hope this video may inspire you to see what other translation patches may be available via the fan translation community site romhacking.net, and I hope you'll join me again for more game and anime related videos. Thanks for watching.